Okay, moving on. 33rd. A Limited leased a machinery to B Limited on the following terms: fair value of machinery, lease term, lease rental per annum, guaranteed residual value, expected residual value, internal rate of return, ascertain unearned financial income and net investment in lease over a period of lease term. Since every year amount is same, we can use the again annuity factor approach for our quick calculation. Let us do that. So here lease payments discounting factor at the rate of 15% and discounted cash flow. Year, how many years are there? 5 years. Again assuming at the end of every year. Lease rental per annum 5. Year 1 to 5, 5 lakh. Discounting factor at 15%. Annuity factor, we can take 3 decimals. %, for 5 years, 3.352. Want to multiply? $16,76,000 exactly. 16,76,000. 352 or 353? 352. Okay. 16,76,000 exactly. Okay. And also last year they get the residual value. Is it guaranteed residual value or expected residual value? It is total residual value, because lesser considers guaranteed as well as unguaranteed. Lesser from his point of view, lessee from his point of view considers only guaranteed. But from lesser, he will take not only what is guaranteed by lessee but also lesser. So both are considered. So total amount, don't do 1 plus 2 lakh. The 2 lakh includes the other 1 lakh also. So 2 lakh only will consider, and discounting factor at 15%. 0.497 and into 2 lakh, 99,400. Therefore, present value of lease payments. This is what we call it as NIL, net investment in lease. What is the amount you get? 17 lakh, 1775,400. What is gross investment in lease? Gross investment in lease is not accounted, only for our reference. That is how much lease payment without applying discounting factor. 5 lakh is paid over 5 years plus last year 2 lakh. So totally $27 lakhs, right? The difference is actually because of time value of money. That is called as unearned finance income. This is the income actually to be recognized over a period of 5 years. Differential amount. We'll verify that. They used to ask this earlier. I don't know whether they ask now because they assume that you would be knowing it from IPC level. Still we'll calculate. It looks like you only don't believe whether you passed IPCC. Somebody should show the marks card and prove, okay, see you have passed IPCC. Okay. 27 lakh minus 17 lakh 75,000. What is the difference? 9 lakh 25? 24,600. Okay. this is the unearned finance income. And net investment over lease period, that means we'll prepare the tabular format, that is year, beginning, that part. The amortization part for 5 years. So year, amount at beginning, or we'll say for easy purpose opening balance. This we call it as finance income for them, finance income at IRR. Then whatever lease payment you consider, and then closing balance. So first year opening balance, we recognize 17 lakh 75 400. Finance income on this at the rate of 15%. Okay, how much you get? 2 lakh 66 310. Okay, lease payment is 5 lakh, therefore closing balance comes to 15 lakh 41 710. And second year, same opening balance 15 lakh 41 710. Finance income on this 15%, 2 lakh 31 257. 5 lakh lease payments, then closing balance. Is these numbers correct? Just check it. And last year you can take it as 7 lakhs, including the residual value, assuming that the entire amount is realized, just for accounting purpose, for calculation. See if the numbers are fine, something difference. Last year you make the interest income, finance income as balancing figure, that 91,501, because it has to become 0 or it has to become residual value. Is numbers fine? And just for one part, can you do the total of financial income? How much amount comes to? $9,24,600. So that's what should perfectly match with your unearned finance income, because that is the income which is recognized over a period of 5 years on account of time value of money. So this finance income ultimately will go to P&L, closing balance will go to balance sheet. They will show it as receivables from lease, net investment in lease, receivables. One small point, out of 15,51,710, how much will you report it as current and how much is non-current? Because every asset and liability should be divided into current and non-current. So let's just quickly represent for our reference. So at the end of year 1, current portion is, you can do it in 2 ways. One, in the second year, what is the amount of lease payment, and out of 5 lakh, what is the amount of interest? So from 5 lakh, subtract 2,31,257. That is the principal component paid in next 1 year. 5 lakh minus 2,31,257. You get 2,68,743. So this is the payment made at the end within next 1 year. So this basically is current. Therefore, non-current is balancing figure. Or I can also tell that will be nothing but 12,72,967, because 15,41,000 will become 12,72,000 means that is also same number will come. Because out of 15,41,740, it is becoming 12,72,000 in next year. That means difference amount should have been paid in the next year. So 12,72,967 is non-current portion. Again, these kind of questions have not been asked in the exam. And that is the pattern. Every difficult question before that was not asked in the exam. So you need to prepare for things which are expected. Okay, so this is 33. Okay, let's go further on next question, 34. Global Limited initiated a lease for 3 years in respect of an equipment costing 1,50,000 with useful life of 4 years. Asset would revert to Global Limited under the lease agreement. The other informations are unguaranteed residual value of the equipment after the expiry lease term is 20,000. Implicit rate is 10%. Annual payments have been determined in such a way that the present value of lease payment is equal to residual value of the cost of the asset. Ascertained in the hands of Global Limited the annual lease payment, the unearned finance income, and segregation of finance income. First of all, in this problem, lease payment only is not given. So they said it is determined such a way that the present value of the lease payment plus present value of residual value is equal to cost of the assets. So let's write that equation. Cost of the asset is present value of lease payment, MLP means lease payments, minimum lease payment, plus present value of residual value. What is cost of the machine? 1,50,000. Now present value of lease payment, it is not one lease payment over a period of 3 years. So lease payment we don't know. We have to multiply it by respective discounting factor. So I'll write like this, see if you're able to understand. Lease payment multiplied by first year discounting factor. Amount I don't know, I'm calling it as lease payments. MLP, lease minimum lease payment. Second year lease payment multiplied by second year discounting factor. Third year lease payment multiplied by third year discounting factor, and last year residual value multiplied by last year discounting factor. So basically if I take it, I get annuity factor for 3 years. That is what the amount ultimately comes to by taking the MLP common. Mathematically simplified, you get 54,296. That is the lease payment which is not given in the problem, you have to compute. MLP, minimum lease payments. In the AS19 we used to use this, I used it, but in Ind AS they use the word just lease payments. No question of minimum lease payments. Lease payments, that's all. So you know the lease payments, you know the residual value. I think other part of it you can try it out, like the way we prepare the table. Net investment lease you can compute. I think net investment lease, I think, but in this case cost of the asset will come. But anyway, other part you can do it. Remaining part of the problem, please take it as homework. You prepare the table and see that difference between the present value and that gross amount matches the financial income, like the way we did in the previous problem. Okay, so this is one problem with the straightforward finance lease. But in the books of manufacturer or a dealer who is in his regular course of business sells, let us do one problem. 35. A lessor enters into 10-year lease equipment of lessee. The equipment is not specialized in nature and expected to have alternative use to the lessor at the end of lease term under the lease. So basically they are telling it is not a financing lease. Lessor receives annual lease payment of 15,000 payable at the end of year. Lessor expects residual value of equipment 50,000 at the end of 10-year lease term. Lessee provides residual value guarantee that protects lessor from first 30,000 of loss for sale at a price below estimated value at the end of lease term, that is 50,000. So basically 50,000 is residual value expected, 30,000 is guaranteed by lessee. So 20,000 is unguaranteed residual value. The equipment has an estimated economic life of 15 years and a carrying amount of 1 lakh, fair value of 1,11,000. The lease does not transfer the ownership of the underlying asset to the lessee at the end of lease term or contain an option to purchase the underlying asset. The interest rate implicit in the lease is 10.07%. How should the lessor account in the books of accounts? It is given that the present value of lease rental 15,000 for 10 years and guaranteed residual value is 30,000 is 103340. Present value of unguaranteed portion is 7660. Okay, you can calculate and verify that amount is approximate. Just quickly do it for this unguaranteed portion. Do this 1 divided by 1.10078, that is 10.078%, press equal to 10 times, then multiplied by unguaranteed residual value of 20,000. See, approximately it's some 7,600. Yeah, some around that number. So we were supposed to calculate, here they only have given. So we make use of that number directly, present value. Let us calculate this number also, how this 103340 comes. That is, you do present value of 15,000 for 10 years and 30,000 last year discounting factor and sum it up. Approximately it should come to 103340. You can check it out, approximately that amount will come. Okay, the question is not specifying it, but please you add it. It is for a lessor who is a dealer. This lessor is also a dealer in these equipments. Basically, he has to recognize sales and expense and all in the P&L account. That's what we meant. So lessor dealer case, that you please add it in the question. It's not specified, but in the institute material heading was there. But in exam heading will not be there, so you just add it. It is in the case of lessor and dealer. Okay, let us compute. What will be the amount to be recognized in the books of lessor? First of all, the pure calculation is net investment in lease, NIL, which we are supposed to calculate the present value of lease payments plus present value of the residual value, unguaranteed residual value. Let's see, unguaranteed portion, because guaranteed is already part of lease payments. So present value of lease payment plus unguaranteed residual value. And present value they only have given in the problem. Actually, I have given in the problem to save time. Anyway, we have been calculating present value so much. For 10 years again, it is a long method. So present value of lease payment is 103,340 plus 7660. That comes to 1,11,000. Is that correct? Or 1,10,000? 11,000. Fine. So this is the asset to be recognized initially, and the other asset, which is existing asset, should be de-recognized. What is the existing carrying amounts? To be de-recognized. What is the book value? One lakh. So this existing asset will be de-recognized 1 lakh. That's what that any normal person would have done, lessor. But he being a dealer, there is one more step which is involved, because he has to take revenue to P&L account and cost also to P&L account. That is the extra thing will come for recognition purpose, not in the impact, but recognition purpose. Revenue to be recognized. So as a manufacturer or dealer, in this case dealer, these additional two lines will come. Revenue to be recognized is net investment in lease but minus unguaranteed residual value, because that portion is not sold yet. This is expectation that he will receive, but he will not receive that money from lessee. Therefore, that extent you cannot recognize it as sales. Here you have not sold yet. So revenue will be 1 lakh. I mean, it will only be 103,340 from 1,11,000. You take out 7660. Basically, that number only will come 103,340. That is the revenue to be recognized. Similarly, cost of goods sold to be recognized in P&L is, again there also, because revenue does not contain an element of unguaranteed portion, the cost also cannot contain portion of unguaranteed element. Therefore, it will be book value of 1 lakh minus 7660. That unguaranteed portion is eliminated. Revenue also not including it, cost also not including it. That is 92,340. Okay, let us pass one journal entry for our more clarity on this. Journal entry at inception of lease. Net investment in lease 1,11,000. Cost of goods sold, that will basically go to P&L account, 92,340. To the existing asset should be de-recognized, which is what is the name of the asset? Equipment, some equipment. Carrying amount 1 lakh. 2, you have to take it to P&L account as a revenue. That amount is 103,340. See if the total amount matches. It's fine, total. So this is the extra 2 lines which will come for manufacturer, because he has to recognize revenue also, cost also. Just profit recognition is not sufficient. He has to recognize sales as well as expenses, because it is his regular course of business to sell these goods. Okay, that is for financing lease. What do we do for operating lease? Operating lease, initial recognition, no new asset recognized. If you have any initial direct cost, it is added to the cost of the asset. We just discussed earlier. This will be amortized over a period of lease term. Subsequently, the lease income can be either recognized on straight line basis or any other systematic basis. Any other systematic basis means whatever the amount paid, that I will recognize. Or you say, this year I am using this asset better. So, I mean, the asset being used by the lessee better. So this year I'll recognize more income. So this year the usage of the equipment is high. Therefore, I'll recognize income also on high basis. So basically either equal basis or any other systematic basis that reflect the pattern of benefits. That is what this point is all about. And variable lease payments is recognized as and when it is accrued, because you will come to know only on the debt, which is not depending on index. And this amortized cost, what is added to the cost of the asset, will be amortized. That's be discussed again. That's all operating lease. I don't think they'll ask the question on operating lease at all. Let us do a problem based on the, okay, before that, one more small point. Again, we have discussed these things enough, but still from the point of view of lessor, there is a lease modification when there is a change in scope or new consideration. Hope you remember the same thing was there, but many more things were there. This is only 2 points to be considered in lessor. Financial lease modification, you can account it as a separate lease provided 2 conditions are satisfied, that is increase in scope and the increase is commensurate with the standalone selling price. Same terminology here. And it is not a separate lease, that is in all other cases you account it as operating lease from inception. You adjust it in the net investment in lease. That is, you are not going to account it separately, you adjust it in the existing amount itself in the net investment in lease. Operating lease, whatever the new lease which has come becomes the effective date of modification, and you are going to account it like a new operating lease. There is no other remeasurement, no calculation of present value of future cash flows, none of these things applies. The date of lease becoming as operating lease, that is to be accounted as new lease. From that point of onwards, you recognize like any other lease income you will recognize in operating lease will be applied. So this is not something different, so you don't expect any question also on this, but as a standard it is there, we have covered it. Presentation in the balance sheet, finance lease will be shown under the asset. You have to break down into current and non-current, and you have to separately classify them as receivable from net investment in lease, present value of the receivables. Operating lease, that will be under any other asset. Specifically, mostly it can come under Ind AS 40, because you are giving the asset to somebody else on income basis, rental basis. So you are not using it for your business. So if it is classifying the property, Ind AS 40 will apply. You can lease out equipment machine, Ind AS 40 will not come. Ind AS 40 is only for land building. So if land and building is let out, which is mostly for lease cases, you will recognize the asset under Ind AS 40, other assets under Ind AS 16. Regularly you do valuations. P&L account, this lease income is recognized as operating income, and on the asset used, you are going to claim depreciation. That point will continue. That is presentation in case of financing lease and operating lease. Let's come to some simple problem. Question number 36. A Limited has given a machinery on lease basis for a period of 3 years, having useful life of 20 years. Amount receivable is as follows. Discuss the accounting treatment in the books of lessor. At inception 1 lakh, year 1, year 2, year 3. What is the total payment expected, lease payments? Total 1 lakh plus 3 lakh plus 4 lakh plus 7 lakh, 15 lakh. If you follow straight line method, straight line methods, 15 lakh divided by 3 lakh, the 3 years, that is 5 lakh per annum is going to be your lease income. First year actually you received only 4 lakh. The balance 1 lakh is outstanding, yet to be received. Second year again you are supposed to receive 5 lakh, but 4 lakh only you received, 1 lakh outstanding. And last year you received the outstanding 2 lakh plus 5 lakh, totally 7 lakh you receive. No question of any interest element here. In operating lease, no question of interest income. Whatever the amount, amortized. If it is a finance income, financial lease only, then that will apply. You take it as present value and interest income and all will be recognized. But operating lease, whatever the accounting policy you follow, that income you recognize, no question of any present value concept. I've taken straight line method. If you have any other method, then you should have any other method. So we go for straight line method. So you can say that straight line method is this. If any other method which reflects the pattern of benefit in that method, you can do it, but in this problem it is not available, so it's not done. But practically, depending on usage, you can do it. Depending on the fair value, you can do it. Depending on whatever the different methods, allocation is possible. But simplest approach is straight line, because not only here, even in depreciation, you could have allowed different methods. In all the problem, we took straight line method because that's what we like, convenient method, or at least for exam purpose. Okay, moving on. One specific discussion, again not complicated, but we still need to have the discussion, that is called as sublease. I think name itself should tell you. You are taking the asset on lease from one person and giving it to somebody else for lease only. So you are lessor or lessee? You are double acting, both cases you are having. So for that purpose, so when you talk about lessor, whom we talk about? There are two lease agreements here. So to be more specific, we are using these terms as given by standards. There are two lease. They are using the one word as head lease, other word as not tail lease, other word is sublease. That is, sublease is the lease given and head lease is the lease taken. So head lease is original, then the last lease is called as sublease. So head lease is received, sublease is given. Two parties, or in fact we will say three parties. Original lessor, that is for head lease, and this sublessor, or you can also call him as intermediate lessor, and he will have one more lease, that is sublease. So you are having two lease. Let's say if you think from A point of view, A will take lease, let's say from X, and A will give it to lease, let's say for P. So this X and A, first lease is called as head lease, that is originating asset. Then A is giving it to somebody else, is outsourcing, that is what is called as sublease. So basically for X it's not a problem, for him he is a lessor. For P is not a problem, for him he is a lessee. The accounting discussion should happen for this intermediate person, because he is a lessor on one hand, he is a lessee on other hand. So our discussion is around this person who is this lessor as well as lessee, who is having this duplicate role, double acting role. From his point of view we are discussing this. Classification of sublease. When the head lease is short-term lease, sublease is operating lease. So you are receiving it on short-term basis, means you are giving it on short-term basis only. You can't receive in short-term and give it on long-term. That's not possible. And otherwise, it may be either operating lease or it is financing lease. Both ways it is possible. The condition is with reference to the ROU asset and not with respect to the underlying assets. That means, let's say that same example, A is there, X is there, P is there. X is given asset to A and A is giving asset to P. The life of the machine is 20 years. Life of the machine is 20 years and X is given to A for a period of, let's say, 15 years. So A has taken a lease for 15 years, some number of years. Let's say that's not 15, let's take 5 years only for easy purpose, 5 years. And A has given to P for 4.5 years. One of the condition that we looked at for classification purpose, whether financing or operating, is the economic life of the asset versus lease term. So if you look at, in this case, what is economic life of the assets? 20 years, and lease term 4.5 years. So it appears it is an operating lease, but that should not be done. What A should do is, within his control, how many years are available? 5 years. Out of 5 years within his control has given 4.5. Therefore, it becomes financing lease. So when you're looking at the time period, you should look from the asset under control, not its original basic economic life, because the Mr. A in this case is having the control only for a period of 5 years. So out of 5 years, how much he is giving? Within his control, how much he is transferring? That should be the basis, not the original life of the asset. That's what I mean by this point. And classification of head lease, you can't use for exemption that practical expedient. This point we discussed at the beginning also. If you are having a sublease, that practical expedient in the books of lessee, what is a practical expedient? For short-term lease or low-value items, you don't have to break down into asset and liability and all, that option will not be available. Because you can't say that the asset which I take it on lease, I'll take it to P&L account without recognizing asset and liability, but that asset will give to somebody on lease purpose. That means what happens is, one lease accounting will happen, other lease accounting will not happen. So the asset you're taking on lease also should be accounted as per Ind AS 16. The asset which you're giving on lease also should be accounted as per Ind AS 116. So if you stop one, other becomes not matching in nature. So if you're giving the asset on sublease, that means the asset what you're taking also should be on 116. You can't apply this exemption of low value asset and short-term lease. Okay, accounting part, again simple one, but still we'll have a look at it. If it is financing lease, sublease is financing. That sublease means lease given or lease taken? Lease given. Lease taken, you account it just like any other lease. No difference. When you give it on lease, you are a lesser position. Therefore, you have to account it as for the head lease, the lease taken. We are talking about the head lease, meaning lease received. Lease received, you recognize lease liability and ROU of the assets. You would have recognized at the beginning. But this ROU of the asset is de-recognized. Can you logically think why it is de-recognized? It is not in your control now. It's a financing lease you have transferred to other person. So your asset should be de-recognized. Then what will you recognize? In sublease, you recognize the amount receivable, net investment in lease. So one asset goes, other asset comes. So what is going out is the ROU asset, and what is coming in, the net investment in lease. During lease term, you for head lease you account for interest expense, for sublease you account for financial income. Both of them will be accounted separately, not netted off. Because netting off means this standard don't tell you, Ind AS 1 will come. So many days back, so long ago, where before you were born, I think, we had that Ind AS 1, where offsetting, we had discussion. One problem also we had on overdraft, the deposit, flexi deposit linked. So set of rules are there, but here it is accounted separately. If sublease is operating in lease, then initially head lease, lease liability continued, ROU asset also continued, because the right is not transferred. That is, you still the owner kind of a thing. So no liability change, no asset change. Sublease, that is because operating lease, you just transfer the interest and depreciation on the head lease, and sublease you are going to recognize operating income. One small point extra is you have to test for impairment. The reason is you are already having an ROU of the assets, which is actually your right of use under the asset receivable benefit, but this operating income what you are likely to receive, the value of that, if it is less, that means you are showing more in your books of accounts, but its recoverable amount may be less. That impairment standard you may have to apply. That's why they said you test for impairment, and if impairment standard Ind AS 36 if it is applied, then you will transfer it as impairment loss to P&L account. That is just to test for impairment. There is no other point discussed under this standard. Okay. Again, everything is straight only. Only point to be kept in mind is if you are giving the asset on financing lease purpose, existing ROU asset should be de-recognized. Everything else, lease taken you account separately, lease you receive you account separately. So there is no other specific special treatment except for this ROU asset being de-recognized. We'll take few small problems. It's not a big thing from exam point of view also. 37. Entity ABC. Original lessee, intermediate lessor. That special person, double acting person, leases a building for 5 years. Building has economic life of 40 years. ABC subleases the building for 4 years. How should the said lease be classified by entity ABC? So when you're thinking from this intermediate person point of view, the basis for classifying should not be the original economic life, but the life under his control. His control is 5 years, and out of that is giving 4 years, represents the substantial portion. We will classify it as finance lease. Let us write that in sentence. Classification of sublease should be depending on ROU asset in head lease and not the underlying asset itself. Hence, term to be considered as economic life for classification is 5 years. Sublease term is 4 years. Hence, it may be classified as finance lease. I still write it may be classified because this 4 out of 5 substantial portion of economic life is not the meaning given by financing lease. They are illustrations given by the standards. They are not the limited cases, and they are not only those cases, or they are just because those cases applies does not mean it become financing lease. The criterion is significant risk and rewards being transferred. So all these are illustrations, so I just still say it may be classified as finance lease. Next, an intermediate lessor enters into 5-year lease for 10,000 square feet, 10,000 square meters of the office space, head lease, with XYZ head lessor. At the beginning of the year 3, intermediate lessor subleases 10,000 square meters of office space for the remaining lease term, that is 3 years of the head lease, to sublessee. How should the said sublease be classified and accounted by the intermediate lessor? Okay, no amounts are given actually, just a theoretical part we have to repeat, no amounts to be computed. Okay, first we have to do classification. Let us do it. Classification of sublease. What is the lease term? Originally 5 years. Out of 5 years, how many years are over? At the beginning of year 3 means 2 years is over. Remaining is 3 years. And what is the sublease period? 3 years. So actually you are giving for entire 3 years on lease purpose. So it is financing lease. So remaining lease term in head lease is 3 years. Lease term in sublease is 3 years. Therefore, sublease is financing lease. Okay, so at the beginning of year 3, they would have already had two things, because they would have originally itself accounted for the lease being a lessee, that is lease liability and ROU assets. So carrying amount of lease liability continued, is continued, that is not touched, and ROU asset is derecognized, that is transferred, that is adjusted, that is closed. But what is recognized now? Because it is a financing lease, you recognize net investment in lease. You know the present value of lease payments plus unguaranteed residual value. Recognize net investment in lease. And so your one asset is derecognized, other asset is recognized. So difference amount you recognize in P&L account. And during the period of 3 years, what and all you are going to recognize? Finance income from sublease and finance expense and depreciation in head lease. Sorry, depreciation will not come because ROU of the asset is derecognized. If it was operating lease, that would have come. So just the financial expense. Finance income also you recognize, financial expense also recognize. Depreciation would have been considered if it was operating lease. Okay, so we have 2 more concepts to go and then we have differences. We'll take it up now. Only 2 more problems. I think we'll try to finish it off today itself. 2 more problems, that's all. 5 minutes plus 5 minutes. Let's see. Okay, next concept again was there in AS 19, but it is different here. But for you anyway, it does not make difference. It's fresh only for you. So either way, for you the same position. To give you the background, you need finance, you need money, and when you need money, you have 2 choices. You go and take loan, borrow, or you sell the asset what you have. You want both of them. Asset also should be with you because you have to run your business, and you need money also. You don't want to borrow. So you will sell the asset and take it back on lease. That is sale and lease back. This concept is there in income tax also. They have separate kind of recognition of depreciation and all. You can apply it in your life also. I know we are towards the end of the class, but I can't help. That's the way I have to do it. I can't help. I can't avoid it. That is byproduct for you. You have to accept. You sell it at scrap value or you leave it. That's okay. But that is my job to tell. Because somebody told that at the end of your life, the bank balance in your account represents the work you should not have done in your life. Because why did you have that bank balance at the end of your life? You worked for it throughout your life and ultimately you're not using it. Money means the effort you have done or the money you received from somebody else. Ultimately it represents purchasing power to acquire something else. But you're not using it, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of amount. So bank balance should be zero. I would go one step further. Not only your bank balance, your entire balance sheet should not be there. It should be actually zero. No asset should be there. No asset should be carried out because any asset you carry out, that means somebody else will make use of it. What is the point in you working for making one asset and somebody else making use of it after your life? In my opinion, your life should be just like the accounting matching concepts. You put the efforts now, you should get the benefit now. Don't put extra benefit that somebody else will get it. And don't put less benefit or less effort that somebody else has to pay for it. You should work for your life. That is what, according to me, matching concept. So at the end of your life, no asset should be there, no liability also should be there. Don't carry over your liability to your future life generation also. Don't transfer both of them. Thing is, you can manage everything, all assets, you can make sure that everything is received, sold in advance, everything is possible. But one small thing, especially Indian mindset, is the house. You want to leave your own house. For that you work throughout your life. But the worst part you don't realize, the sale value of the asset, sale value of that house you never realize, but you work throughout your life. If you sell, you can't live in your own house. So what is the alternative, which is you can sell, you get the money, you can enjoy when you are alive. At the same time, you are living in your own house. The concept available is sale and lease back. Sell it, get crores of rupees, spend in your lifetime, and you pay the rent. Nobody else will know outside of that you have sold it. So you are living in your own house. Those things are all just sentiments. They are not realities. But reality is you lose the amount of sale value of the asset. Okay, if you think that your their children will use it, then I can't tell. But in my opinion, you have worked throughout your life. Just imagine your articleship period, you understand how much you have sacrificed, and for benefit of your children, in my opinion, it does not make sense. You should enjoy your efforts. That should be the base. And that's why I think in SFM also I told you on the day one itself that you plan for your retirement. Don't work too much, that ultimately what you work means you need to spend that money. If you're not in a position to spend that money, that amount is waste. Amount is waste is okay, but your effort has gone waste. Your work towards it. If somebody tells you, you work now, you get 1 lakh, later that 1 lakh has to be compulsorily given to somebody else. You say, will not work only. It's not about loss of 1 lakh, it's about the effort that has gone in to earn that 1 lakh has gone waste. And if you know in advance, you don't do it. Anyway, so a lot of things are there in sale and lease back, you can connect it. But how do we do the accounting part is what we'll come to it now. So what are the parties that are involved here? What do we call him? Or what do we call those two persons? You are selling. You are seller. Other person is buyer. And you are taking back the asset on lease. So you are lessee. And other person is lessor. So we call them as seller lessee or buyer lessor. Ultimately, it's two names but having two different positions. Accounting is this. You apply Ind AS 115 to determine whether the transfer of control happened or not. Basically, whether when you sell the assets, you are selling only for the namesake or actually you are selling it to some other person. So, sale is connected with Ind AS 115. So, you apply those control characteristic like legal transfer, consideration, time of payment, physical possession, lot of points were there. Considering all these things, you assess whether the control is a sale or not. If control is a sale, then the seller or lessee will have to account for two transactions. That is, one for lease, other for sale. The name itself will tell, seller and lessee. For lease, what you should account? He is a lessee. What we have been discussing so far, he has to recognize two things. One is lease liability, other is ROU asset. But the ROU asset was with himself earlier, which he is selling and getting it back. So, when you are recognizing the ROU asset, that is not equal to present value of lease liability. That is equal to proportionate amount of carrying amounts. Basically means, for simplicity's sake, you are having carrying amount of 1 lakh and you are transferring it and you are getting it back. Let's say you are transferring the control 100% and you are getting it back 30% for just computation purpose. So effectively, how much control you transferred? 70%. On that 70% where you transfer the control, you can recognize the sale transaction and you can recognize profits. Because to that extent, sale took place, control took place. But to the extent 30% coming back to you, whatever your existing amount will become ROU amount. That is, 70,000 will become cost of goods sold, 30,000 becomes your ROU asset, proportionate amount of the asset which is retained. So it's not equal to ROU, the lease liability, it's equal to proportionate amount of the control retained in the carrying amount. And difference between these two, you can take it to P&L account. That is what the standard says. For buyer, it's very simple. Lease, you account it as either operating lease or financing lease, depending on the condition satisfied. And purchase, you apply as per respective Ind AS. Mostly will apply Ind AS 116 because he would have purchased the asset. But if it was under in property or something, it becomes Ind AS 40. Respective standard would apply. If control is not transferred, that means sale is not taking place, lease is also not taking place. Then what is happening? Sale is not happening because control is not transferred. So what is happening? Class is getting over, that's all. The sale cannot be recognized. Lease liability cannot be recognized, ROU asset is not recognized, but still you received the amount. You treat it like a financing transaction, that is, you treat it like borrowing. Money received and lease payment, what you thought you would pay, you treat it as repayment of installments kind of thing. Therefore, you apply Ind AS 109. If it is assets, that I mean related to the asset amount, that is continued, nothing is touched. Carrying amount of the asset continued as it is. To an extent, this problem was solved in Ind AS 115, where we had problems on sale of the assets with a agreement to repurchase the assets. We had discussed under 3 situations. Forward option, forward agreement, where you had obligation to repurchase, where you had call option holder position, where you decide, the holder will decide whether to sell it or not, or the other option, writer position, where other person will decide and you just oblige. Either you decide or other person will decide. That is, one person option holder, like call option holder, or put option writer kind of thing. We discussed 3 situations. Try to recollect. Anyway, similarly, this is what we are going to treat. We'll recognize the differential amount as income. And for buyer, it is just the opposite. For the seller, it is like borrowing amounts. So other person, what will happen? It is the loan given. He will account it as receivable under Ind AS 109, and asset will not be recognized. So asset here is not de-recognized. There the asset is not recognized. Let's see if we can do the problem, or we'll discuss one more situation. Okay, we'll try to do the problem itself. Question number 39. One more point on this is there, but that will take it up afterwards. First, we'll do this straightforward problem. Oh, okay. Entity sells for a cash of 30 lakh, building care 15 lakh, but at the same time it's having a, okay, the fair value is different. Okay, I can't do this problem without explaining that point. We'll have to do this. Okay, we'll discuss this. Maybe problem we'll take it up in the next session. When the transfer is sale, again, if transfer is not sale, accounting is very simple. You treat it as like a financing transaction. For one person borrowed, other person lending. Matter over, no other discussion. So when there is a sale, when control is there, you have to adjust for one more element, adjust for off market terms. That is, the transaction what you are doing is not in line with the market values. What are the transaction happening here? One is the sale transaction, other is the lease transaction. If sale is not equal to fair value of the asset, or the lease payment is not in line with the market lease payment. So if they are not in line, they are not in market terms, we need some adjustment. Either sale transaction or when the lease payments are not in line with the market payments. So basically your transaction amount is different. Fair value of those in the market is different. The accounting treatment goes like this. On lower terms. Lower terms means when sale value is lesser than fair value, or when lease payment is lesser than market lease payments. Present value of lease payment is lesser than present value of market lease payment on lower terms. So let's say you take this as example. You are selling at a lower amounts, but in the market the fair value is high. Why do you think you sell at a lower amount? If you go to market, you would have sold at a higher price. Why you go for this disadvantage position? Because the other person is ready to give you the asset back on lease purpose. So this lower amount of sale is connected with the lease taken back. So the seller will account the difference as lease payments, the fair value and the sale value. If the sale value is, let's say 1 lakh and fair value is 1,20,000. So how much is receivable for this seller? If you say bank account, 1 lakh. But had he given to somebody else, he would have received 1,20,000. So you still have to recognize sales of 1,20,000. Credit is 1 lakh, but debit is credit is 1,20,000, debit is 1 lakh. The difference amount you are not receiving, you treat it as prepaid lease. So journal entry part, it will be bank account 1 lakh, lease prepayment 20,000, to sales 1,20,000. Sales is recognized at fair value basis, but actual transaction is different. So difference you treat as lease prepayment. In fact, this extent we have discussed to an extent in Ind AS 115. There was one container problem where he will have to make a deposits and they will get back deposit after 3 years at the same amounts. So we computed the amount of deposit, amount of present value, and difference we had not transferred to P&L account, because if it was at market terms, it would have taken to P&L account. When the market terms are different, the transaction terms are different, fair value is different, the difference you treat it, whether it recognizes the conditions of other assets to be recognized, that is in this case or in that case, the difference amount actually represent amount paid in advance for using that container. So we treat it as lease prepayment. Same thing here. The logic, the concept is same. Difference is treated as lease prepayment. For buyer point of view, he will also has to adjust for the purchase price. That is, he will not account it at 1 lakh. He will account it at 1,20,000. 20,000 is accounted as lease receivables, or for him it is already received, 20,000 kind of thing. So his purchase price and his sale price both will be ultimately reflected at fair value terms. That is on lower terms. What if it is on higher terms? how can you sell at a higher price? Why will other party pay you higher price? Because what you tell, I need the asset, I need the money also, so you give me more money, I will give you more lease rentals. So I get more money, but I also pay you more lease rentals, so that fair value gets adjusted ultimately, so that my financial need is fulfilled. So in higher terms, the extra amount you receive is a support for you. So you treat it like a additional finance, you treat it like a loan receipt. So in the same example, if let's say fair value is 1 lakh and sale consideration is 1,20,000, how much will be taken to P&L account for revenue purpose? 1 lakh. But you received additional 20,000. Additional 20,000 is treated like loan, like in the previous case, if it is not a transfer, if it is not a sale. Additional amount is treated as a loan received. And buyer also, he has to account it as loan given. The difference should be adjusted and to be accounted for purchase price at a lower amount. And seller also will recognize sale value at a lower amount. So this will apply when the transfer is a sale. If it is not a sale, these things do not apply, because only one simple transaction, borrowing is considered and other person lending is considered. All these additional fair value, none of these things is recognized. So no question of any adjustment for any difference also. So this part and the previous part put together, we should do one problem. And then we have to do one problem on transition. When you are moving from existing Ind AS 17 or AS 19 to Ind AS 116, what are the changes? Should you do retrospective effect, prospective effect, that alternative, and then one problem on that, and difference between AS, Ind AS, difference between Ind AS 17, Ind AS 116, difference between Ind AS 116 and AS 19, and difference between Ind AS 116 and IFRS 16. So those are the differences that we need to understand. That part we'll take it up tomorrow. Tomorrow being the last session, we have so many chapters to cover, but all of them are small chapters, so it will not take much time. But let us not take chance. Let us try to start at the earliest, so that if we leave early, it's good. You never complain that we leave early, which never happened, of course. But let us not take the chance. Let us be on safety basis. After all, we are doing accounting. Let us be prudent in our decision making. So let us start at the earliest. What is the earliest you can start? Okay, we'll start at 4. I think 4. Can we make little bit earlier? Don't tell 5 o'clock. Now, if it gets over early, it's good. We can leave early, but we don't want to take time. This will take about maybe 1 hour remaining. And then we have Ind AS 101, and then we have remaining chapter. We'll try to start little bit more earlier. We'll start at 2 o'clock. After lunch only we'll start. So one day you manage your post-lunch session in office. Anyway, you sleep there. You come here and sleep. That's what you do anyways. But the last day, so we'll discuss about in general also how to prepare those kind of things. So stop at this point. Tomorrow we'll meet at 2 o'clock. And we'll try to finish it off with tomorrow itself. We don't require much time. So tomorrow we meet at 2 o'clock. Prepare accordingly.